Imagine you're standing in a boardroom, about to negotiate a deal worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your heart is racing, your palms are sweaty, and across the table sits someone who seems to hold all the cards. Now imagine walking into that same room with unshakable confidence, knowing exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to get the outcome you want. This transformation from negotiation novice to master is exactly what Tim Castle achieved, and what he teaches in The Art of Negotiation, how to get what you want every time. At just 23 years old, Tim Castle became a professional negotiator. Within 12 months, he was single-handedly closing million-dollar deals. But here's what makes his story remarkable. The author didn't start as a natural-born negotiator. He was just like most of us, uncertain, unprepared, and often accepting whatever was offered. His journey from that uncertain young man to a master negotiator who built his entire career around the science of getting what you want is a testament to one powerful truth. Negotiation is a learnable skill. Today, we're diving deep into Castle's proven system that has helped thousands of people transform not just their business deals, but their entire lives. Whether you're asking for a raise, buying your first home, or simply trying to get better service at a restaurant, the principles the author shares will give you the confidence and tools to negotiate like a pro. Chapter 1. The Negotiation Mindset. Everyone is a negotiator. The author begins with a revolutionary premise that challenges how most people think about negotiation. Castle argues that we negotiate far more than we realize. We're all negotiators, whether we admit it or not. From the moment you wake up and decide what to wear, to choosing what to eat for breakfast, to asking your boss for time off, you're constantly making decisions that involve some form of negotiation. The problem, according to Castle, isn't that we don't negotiate. The problem is that we negotiate poorly because we don't recognize when we're doing it. The author recalls his early days when he would accept the first price offered at a used car lot, never questioning whether there was room for improvement. He shares how this passive approach cost him thousands of dollars and countless opportunities throughout his 20s. The author introduces what he calls the negotiation awareness principle, the idea that once you recognize every interaction as a potential negotiation, you begin to see opportunities everywhere. He explains that successful negotiators don't see negotiation as confrontation. They see it as collaboration toward a mutually beneficial outcome. Castle emphasizes that the biggest barrier most people face isn't lack of technique, it's mindset. He argues that many people avoid negotiating because they've been conditioned to believe it's aggressive, selfish, or inappropriate. The author dismantles these limiting beliefs by showing that good negotiation actually creates value for everyone involved. The chapter concludes with Castle's fundamental truth. You miss 100% of the negotiations you don't take. This simple statement encapsulates why developing negotiation skills isn't just helpful, it's essential for anyone who wants to improve their quality of life. One are the 5 space that you may not let on with pass. Well, we miss more test, and that's what we says. Honest the authors know is a fairy to type. Honest the offers has to do for the H Tower. Who be engage a lot of them too helpfully with their fears. Chapter 2. The 4 Pillars of Preparation. Castle dedicates significant attention to what he considers the foundation of all successful negotiations: preparation. The author learned this lesson the hard way during his early career when he walked into important meetings with little more than hope and good intentions. He quickly discovered that the most confident negotiators weren't necessarily the most naturally gifted. They were the most prepared. The author breaks down preparation into 4 essential pillars. The first pillar is research, understanding not just what you want, but what the other party wants, needs, and fears. Castle shares how he once spent weeks researching a potential client's company culture, recent challenges, and industry trends before a major negotiation. This preparation allowed him to speak their language and address their specific concerns, ultimately closing a deal his competitors couldn't. The second pillar is setting clear objectives. The author explains that most people enter negotiations with vague goals like get a good deal or try to pay less. Castle teaches a more sophisticated approach, defining your ideal outcome, your acceptable outcome, and your walkaway point before any negotiation begins. He shares personal examples of how this clarity prevented him from making emotional decisions under pressure. The third pillar involves understanding your value proposition. Castle argues that you can't effectively negotiate if you don't understand what unique value you bring to the table. The author guides readers through exercises to identify their strengths, unique selling points, and the specific benefits they offer to others. The fourth and final pillar is anticipating objections and responses. The author learned to think like a chess player, always staying several moves ahead. He teaches readers to prepare responses not just for obvious objections, but for unexpected challenges that might arise during the negotiation process. Castle concludes this chapter with a powerful insight. Preparation isn't just about gathering information. It's about building the confidence that comes from knowing you're ready for whatever happens. Chapter 3. The Psychology of Influence. In this chapter, Castle delves into the psychological principles that drive human decision-making. The author explains that negotiation isn't just about facts and figures. It's about understanding how people think, feel, and make choices. He shares how mastering these psychological principles transformed his approach from simply presenting logical arguments to crafting persuasive experiences. The author introduces the concept of reciprocity, the powerful human tendency to return favors. Castle shares a story about how he once closed a difficult deal by first helping his negotiating partner solve an unrelated problem. This act of genuine service created a psychological debt that made the other party more inclined to work with him on their primary negotiation. Castle also explores the principle of social proof, how people look to others for guidance on how to behave. The author learned to reference other successful partnerships and satisfied clients during negotiations, not to brag, but to provide social validation for his proposals. He explains how framing requests in terms of what similar people have done makes others more comfortable saying yes. The chapter covers the psychology of scarcity and urgency, but Castle is careful to distinguish between authentic scarcity and manipulative pressure tactics. The author emphasizes that ethical negotiators use these principles to communicate genuine value and real deadlines, not to create false urgency. One of the most powerful concepts Castle introduces is emotional anchoring, the idea that the first number mentioned in a negotiation heavily influences the final outcome. The author shares specific techniques for setting favorable anchors while avoiding the trap of accepting unfavorable ones set by others. Castle concludes this psychological exploration with a crucial insight. Understanding psychology isn't about manipulation. It's about communication. When you understand how people process information and make decisions, you can present your ideas in ways that make them easier to accept and act upon. Chapter 4. The Power of Collaborative Negotiation. Castle challenges the common misconception that negotiation is a zero-sum game where one person wins and another loses. The author argues that the most successful negotiations create value for everyone involved, and he shares specific strategies for achieving these win-win outcomes. The author introduces his collaborative framework by sharing a personal story about negotiating the purchase of his first home. Instead of trying to beat down the seller's price through aggressive tactics, Castle took time to understand the seller's true needs. He discovered that the seller needed a quick closing more than a high price. By offering a faster timeline and fewer contingencies, Castle got a better price while giving the seller exactly what they valued most. Castle explains the importance of separating positions from interests. Positions are what people say they want. Interests are why they want it. The author teaches readers to dig deeper than surface-level demands to understand the underlying motivations that drive people's negotiating positions. The chapter includes Castle's technique for expanding the negotiation beyond a single variable. Instead of arguing only about price, successful negotiators consider timing, payment terms, additional services, future opportunities, and other factors that might matter to both parties. The author shares examples of how this approach has led to creative solutions that satisfied everyone involved. Castle also addresses how to handle competitive negotiators who approach every discussion as a battle to be won. The author provides specific language patterns and strategies for redirecting competitive energy toward collaborative problem-solving without appearing weak or naive. The chapter concludes with Castle's insight that collaborative negotiation isn't just more ethical, it's more effective. When people feel like they're working with you rather than against you, they're more likely to share information, consider creative solutions, and maintain positive relationships for future interactions. Chapter 5. Mastering the Conversation. Castle dedicates this chapter to the actual mechanics of negotiation conversations. The author emphasizes that what you say and how you say it can make the difference between success and failure, regardless of how well you've prepared. The author begins with the importance of active listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk, but genuinely seeking to understand the other person's perspective. Castle shares how he learned this lesson during a negotiation where he was so focused on his prepared talking points that he missed crucial information the other party was trying to share. The author teaches specific listening techniques, including how to ask follow-up questions that demonstrate understanding and uncover additional information. Castle introduces his framework for structuring negotiation conversations. He recommends starting with relationship building and agenda setting before diving into specific terms. The author explains that people are more willing to work with you on difficult issues when they feel respected and understood. The chapter covers the strategic use of silence in negotiations. Castle explains that many people are uncomfortable with pauses in conversation and will often make concessions simply to fill the silence. The author teaches readers when to speak and when to remain quiet, using silence as a tool for gathering information and encouraging others to reveal their true positions. Castle also addresses how to handle difficult moments in negotiations. When emotions run high, when deadlocks occur, or when the other party becomes hostile. The author provides specific phrases and techniques for de-escalating tension while maintaining focus on finding solutions. One of the most valuable sections covers how to make and respond to offers. Castle explains that the way you present an offer is often more important than the offer itself. The author teaches readers how to frame proposals in terms of benefits to the other party and how to respond to offers in ways that keep negotiations moving forward. Castle argues that emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions, is perhaps the most crucial skill for successful negotiation. The author shares personal stories about how learning to manage his own emotions and read others' emotions transformed his effectiveness as a negotiator. The author begins by addressing the role of emotions in decision-making. Castle explains that while people like to believe they make logical decisions, emotions heavily influence every choice we make. Understanding this reality allows negotiators to address both the logical and emotional aspects of any proposal. Castle introduces techniques for managing your own emotions during high-pressure negotiations. The author learned that anxiety, frustration, and excitement can all cloud judgment and lead to poor decisions. He shares specific breathing techniques, mental preparation strategies, and ways to maintain composure when negotiations become challenging. The chapter covers how to read emotional signals from others. Castle teaches readers to pay attention to body language, tone of voice, and other nonverbal cues that reveal how people are truly feeling about a negotiation. The author emphasizes that these signals often provide more accurate information than words alone. Castle also addresses how to respond appropriately to others' emotions. When someone becomes frustrated, angry, or anxious during a negotiation, the author provides specific strategies for acknowledging their feelings while keeping the conversation productive. He explains that trying to ignore or dismiss emotions usually makes them stronger, while acknowledging them often diffuses tension. The chapter concludes with Castle's insight that emotional intelligence isn't about being touchy-feely, it's about being realistic. Since emotions inevitably influence negotiations, skilled negotiators learn to work with emotions rather than against them. Chapter 7, Handling Objections and Difficult Scenarios. Castle dedicates this chapter to the challenging moments that separate amateur negotiators from professionals. The author acknowledges that no matter how well you prepare, negotiations rarely go exactly as planned. Learning to handle unexpected objections and difficult scenarios is what allows negotiators to succeed consistently. The author begins with his systematic approach to handling objections. Castle explains that most people's instinct when faced with an objection is to argue or to immediately offer concessions. Instead, the author teaches a four-step process. Acknowledge the concern, ask clarifying questions to understand the root issue, address the underlying problem, and confirm that the solution satisfies their concern. Castle shares a story about a negotiation where a potential client objected to his pricing. Instead of immediately lowering his fees, the author asked questions to understand what was driving the price concern. He discovered that the client wasn't worried about the total cost, but about cash flow timing. By offering a different payment structure, Castle maintained his full fee while solving the client's real problem. The chapter covers how to handle common difficult scenarios: when the other party makes unreasonable demands, when they threaten to walk away, when they bring up competitors, or when they claim to have no authority to make decisions. Castle provides specific language and strategies for each situation. The author also addresses when and how to walk away from negotiations. Castle explains that the willingness to walk away is often what gives you the power to get what you want. However, the author teaches readers how to walk away in a way that leaves the door open for future opportunities, rather than burning bridges. Castle concludes this chapter with his philosophy that difficult scenarios aren't obstacles to overcome. They're opportunities to demonstrate your professionalism and create deeper trust with the people you're negotiating with. Chapter 8, Building Long-Term Relationships Through Negotiation. In the final chapter, Castle shifts focus from individual negotiations to the bigger picture of building lasting relationships. The author argues that the best negotiators think beyond single transactions to create ongoing partnerships that benefit everyone involved. Castle shares how this long-term perspective changed his entire approach to business. Instead of trying to extract maximum value from each negotiation, the author began focusing on creating experiences that made people want to work with him again. This shift not only improved his relationships, but actually increased his financial success, as satisfied partners brought him new opportunities. The author introduces his concept of relationship deposits, actions during negotiations that build trust and goodwill, even when they might not provide immediate benefit. Castle explains how small gestures of consideration, flexibility on minor issues, and genuine concern for others' success create a foundation for future collaboration. The chapter covers how to handle situations where short-term and long-term interests conflict. Castle provides a framework for making decisions that balance immediate needs with relationship preservation. The author shares examples of times when he accepted less favorable terms in specific negotiations because maintaining the relationship was more valuable than maximizing that single deal. Castle also addresses how to repair relationships when negotiations go poorly. The author acknowledges that, despite best intentions, some negotiations create tension or disappointment. He provides specific strategies for addressing these situations honestly while rebuilding trust for future interactions. The book concludes with Castle's ultimate insight. Negotiation isn't really about getting what you want. It's about creating value for everyone involved, while building the relationships that make future success possible. Tim Castle's The Art of Negotiation reveals a fundamental truth that many people spend their entire lives never realizing. You already negotiate every single day. The only question is whether you're doing it well or poorly. Castle's journey from an uncertain 27-year-old who accepted whatever was offered to a master negotiator closing million-dollar deals proves that these skills can be learned by anyone willing to put in the effort. The author's approach is revolutionary because it reframes negotiation from confrontation to collaboration. Instead of trying to defeat others, Castle teaches us to work with them to create outcomes that everyone can celebrate. This shift in perspective doesn't just make us better negotiators, it makes us better partners, employees, leaders, and human beings. Perhaps most importantly, Castle demonstrates that negotiation mastery isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming the most effective version of who you already are. The confidence that comes from knowing you can advocate for yourself, the respect you earn by treating others fairly, and the opportunities that open up when you're known as someone who creates win-win solutions. These benefits extend far beyond any single negotiation. Remember Castle's words, "You miss 100% of the negotiations you don't take." Every day presents new opportunities to practice these skills, to improve your outcomes, and to build stronger relationships. The question isn't whether you'll negotiate. You will. The question is whether you'll negotiate with intention, preparation, and skill. Your journey to becoming a master negotiator starts with your very next conversation. Whether you're discussing weekend plans with your family, asking for better service from a customer support representative, or preparing for a major business meeting, you now have the tools to approach every interaction with confidence and purpose. The art of negotiation isn't just about getting what you want. It's about creating a life where you consistently add value to others while achieving your own goals. That's not just good negotiation, that's good living. If this summary has given you insights that could transform your personal and professional relationships, make sure to subscribe for more powerful book summaries that will change your mindset. Hit that notification bell so you never miss content that could be the key to unlocking your next level of success. And remember, your next great opportunity might be just one conversation away.